An absolute discharge is the lowest level adult sentence that an offender can get. If an offender gets an absolute discharge, a finding of guilt is made but no conviction is registered, and they are not given any conditions to follow, i.e. a probation order. The offender is finished with their case that day. They don't have to come to court again or check in with a probation officer. An absolute discharge will stay on an offender's criminal record for 1 year after the date they received the discharge. The offender doesn't have to apply for a pardon for the discharge to be removed from their record. A conditional discharge is similar to an absolute discharge because a finding of guilt is made, but no conviction is registered. What makes it different from an absolute discharge is that there are conditions that the offender must follow. The conditions always come in a probation order that can be in effect from 1 to 3 years. A conditional discharge stays on an offender's criminal record for 3 years after the completion of the probation order. Like an absolute discharge, the offender doesn't have to apply for a pardon for the discharge to be removed from his or her record. Like a conditional discharge, a suspended sentence involves following conditions in a probation order for a period of 1 to 3 years. The main difference between a conditional discharge and a suspended sentence is that an offender who gets a suspended sentence has a conviction registered against them. This means that the offender who gets a suspended sentence will have a criminal record and will have to apply for a pardon to have the conviction removed from their record. Probation is a court order to do or not to do certain things for a period of time. It is usually called a probation order. An offender who gets a conditional discharge or a suspended sentence will always have a probation order that they must follow. Every probation order will have the following conditions: keep the peace and be of good behavior, appear in court when ordered by the court, tell the court or probation officer about any change of name, address, or job. Other conditions sometimes included as part of a probation order are not buy, carry, or drink alcohol, not have or use drugs that aren't prescribed by a doctor, not have or carry any weapons, i.e. knives, perform community service, not to call, text message, or email a certain person or persons, give money back to a victim, stay away from a certain person or persons and not go to their house or where they work, go to counseling or rehabilitation, and report to a probation officer, sometimes every week or month. A fine is an amount of money that an offender must pay to the court. It is different from restitution or a tradable donation. If an offender is given a fine, they will have a conviction registered against them and will have to apply for a pardon to have the fine removed from their record. A fine can be given instead of, or in addition to, imprisonment, a conditional sentence, or an intermittent sentence. This is true unless the criminal offense requires minimum jail time. If this is the case, a fine can't be given instead of jail, but can still be given in addition to the minimum jail time. A fine cannot be given on top of an absolute discharge, a conditional discharge, or a suspended sentence. Certain criminal offenses, like impaired driving or driving over 80, have minimum. If a judge is going to give the offender a fine and the criminal offense does not have a minimum fine, the judge has to decide whether the offender can actually pay a fine. This usually means that the judge will ask the offender questions such as, are you working? Do you have children to support? Does your spouse work? Imprisonment is a jail sentence. After a judge gives a jail sentence, the offender is taken to jail and a conviction is registered against them. An offender has to apply for a pardon in order to have a jail sentence removed from their record. If an offender is sent to jail for less than 2 years, they will go to a provincial institution such as Maplehurst Correctional Facility in Milton or the Central East Correctional Center in Lindsay. If an offender is sent to jail for 2 years or more, they will go to a federal penitentiary, such as the Kingston Penitentiary. If the judge does give credit for pre-sentence custody, they may have the option of giving enhanced credit or 2-for-1 credit. This means that for every day the offender spent in pre-sentence custody, the judge reduces the jail sentence by 2 days. An intermittent sentence is a jail sentence that the offender serves in chunks of time instead of all at once. For example, if an offender gets an intermittent sentence, they may go jail on the weekends, i.e. Friday night until Monday morning, but be out of jail during the week. This continues until the sentence is finished. Just like imprisonment, a conditional sentence will result in a conviction being registered against the offender. To give an offender a conditional sentence, the judge first imposes a sentence of imprisonment and then considers whether to let the offender serve the sentence outside of jail. House arrest usually means that the offender must stay in their home at all times or during certain hours, unless they are working, attending school, or religious worship, or for medical appointments or emergencies. Other conditions attached may be similar to those of a probation order. If an offender allegedly breaks one or more of the conditions of a conditional sentence, there may be a hearing held in front of a judge. If the judge is convinced that the offender broke one or more of the conditions without a lawful or reasonable excuse, the judge may make the offender serve the remaining time in jail.